Hello and welcome. In this lecture video, this is the final lecture video for Chapter 10. And this lecture video starts on page 240 of your course pack, and it covers natural resources, and it also has some quick check problems, okay? So natural resources are those assets that are going to be physically consumed when they're used. So for example, oil and gas fields, timber, mineral deposits. Okay, and they are consumed when they're used, and so they're also known as wasting assets. You can also think of them as soon-to-be inventories of raw materials that will be converted into finished goods via mining, pumping, or cutting. Okay, but until this conversion, they're treated as non-current assets, so oil reserves, mineral deposits. So just like our other plant assets, natural resources are recorded at cost, and so that includes all of our expenditures necessary to purchase the resource, so purchase the mineral deposit or the oil and gas fields, and then prepare it for its intended use. Now, rather than depreciation, rather than talking about depreciation in the context of natural resources, we talk about depletion. Okay, so depletion is the process of allocating the cost of purchasing that natural resource, and then the expenditures ready to get it ready for use to the period when it's consumed. So it's conceptually similar to the idea of depreciation, but we don't call it depreciation in the context of oil and gas fields or mineral deposits. We call it depletion. Okay. So natural resources are reported on the balance sheet at the cost less accumulated depletion rather than depreciation. All right. Depreciation expense is based upon the units of production depreciation method. So it's similar to the units of production depreciation method. That's the way we calculate depletion expense. Is we calculate our depletion per unit, and then we multiply that depletion per unit times the number of units, okay, in that accounting period. So if we look at this example on the next page, 241 right over here, let's think about a mineral deposit that has an estimated 250,000 tons of available ore. It's purchased for $500,000 for $500,000. So let's go ahead and calculate depletion expense, okay? So you can come over here and we're going to do step one, which is just like our units of production depreciation method. So we take our asset cost minus our salvage value, which in this case is 0, divided by the total number of units, 250,000 tons available, okay? And what that gives us is a depletion expense of $2 per ton. Okay, and then step two, let's say that we actually mined 85,000 tons. Say we mined 85,000 tons in the accounting period. Okay, so then what we would do is, so we have the 85,000 tons and times the $2 of depletion expense per ton would give us that $170,000 worth of depletion expense. And so then on 12/31, we would do an adjusting journal entry where we would debit depletion expense, $170,000, and then credit accumulated depletion of $170,000. Okay, so that would be our journal entry, and then that accumulated depletion shows up right there. And so what we were saying on that prior page is we have the cost of our mineral deposit, the cost, minus our accumulated depletion, and then this is similar to the book value, and then that is the number that comes into calculating our total assets. Okay, so it's very similar to the idea of we have the asset cost less accumulated depreciation gives us the book value. Same idea, but rather than calling it depreciation, We call it depletion, and the way that we calculate depletion expense is based upon the units of production method. And the units of production method has the first step where you calculate the depletion expense per unit by taking the asset cost minus the salvage value divided by the total number of units. And then step 2, multiply your depletion expense per unit times the number of units, 170,000 right there. Okay. Now, if we have any plant assets that are used in extracting our natural resources, those would be recorded in a separate account, and those would be depreciated, not depleted. Okay. All right. So let's look at this. Look at these quick check problems over here. And so what I want you to do is to pause the lecture video and do number 46 and number 112, and then come back and check your work. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so let's see how you did. So with number 46, natural resources are assets that include standing timber, mineral deposits, and oil and gas fields. That is true. And then number 112, a company purchased a mineral deposit for $800,000. It expects this property to produce 1.2 million tons of ore and have a salvage value of $50,000. In the current year, the company mined and sold 90,000 tons of ore. What's the depletion expense? So we can take, this is step 1. And I just showed it to you a little bit differently. Step 1 of our units of production method to calculate the depletion expense per ton of ore. So I take my asset cost minus my salvage value divided by my total tons of ore, and then I multiply that times the tons of ore that I mined during the accounting period, 90,000. This is my debit to depletion expense, 56,250, and then the credit to accumulated depletion. The right answer is D. Okay. So let's go on to the next page. And so what I want you to do is do numbers 130 and 131. And if we look at, let's look at 130. So the company acquires mineral deposit of 5.9 million. It incurs additional costs of $600,000 to access the deposit. So you want to think about whether this would be included in the cost basis for the mineral deposit. Whether or not this would be included in the depletion expense. Remember, we take our asset cost minus the salvage value. Is this number, does this represent a normal and reasonable expense that would be included or added to this 5.9 million to come up with the cost basis for the mineral deposit? I want you to think about that when you do this problem. Okay, so I want you to pause the lecture video, do number 130 and do number 131. And then we'll come back and check it, okay? Okay, hello and welcome back. So with number 130, we take our asset cost, and then we do add that $600,000 because this is normal and reasonable, okay? There is no salvage value. So I take the 5.9 million plus my 600,000 divided by my 2 million, gives me $3.25 of depletion expense per ton of ore. In this case, we had 418,000 tons remined, times the 325 gives us our 1,358,500. This would be our depletion expense, so B is the right answer. And then number 131, it's the exact same problem. Keep in mind there is no salvage value for this. In 131, it's the exact same problem. It's just asking you for the journal entry, and it's D, debit depletion expense, credit accumulated depletion. Okay, so I hope you got those right. And that is the end of our Chapter 10 notes. Thank you so much. Bye.